Fcfa à répartir entre les différents pays de la CEMAC. La taille de la population
of the coronavirus with debt relief for Cameroon at an audience at the Unity Palace today. Prime Minister Joseph John Gute has extended government measures to stop COVID-19 by 2 weeks and says schools may reopen in Cameroon on the 1st of June if the spread of coronavirus is contained. The group of 20 nations has granted a $12,000 billion moratoria to 40 low-income countries undergoing hardships as a result of the coronavirus. The details now. Thanks for watching the 7:30 news on CRTV. I am Moki Edwin Kinzaka in Yaoundé. Cameroon and France are on the same health track to make the deadly coronavirus history for humanity. This was one of the salient points of the audience granted the French ambassador to Cameroon, Christophe Guilou, today by President Paul Biya. Both personalities also discussed French debt relief for Cameroon because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Unity Paris correspondent Ashunyanti reports.
French Ambassador Christophe Guilou is the first foreign diplomat to call on President Paul Biya since 1 month of wild conjectures. Right from here, it is clear COVID-19 should not be toyed with. And as he appears before President Paul Biya this April 16, 2020, the enforced good practices, no handshakes and social distancing are followed to the letter. Paul Biya is performing his ordinary, routine and sovereign duties. This is thus the president, flesh and bones, looking robust with his usual verve. For well over 1 hour, he and the French diplomat discussed Cameroon's national interest in the northwest and southwest regions and also hailed the efforts of France within the G7 and G20 countries in fighting the coronavirus, especially the easing of the debt burden on Cameroon.
And that will have a direct impact. It will, the fact that we have a moratorium on the debt will represent for Cameroon 230 billion francs CFA. That's more or less the consequence. And regarding France, it will, the impact will be of about 60 billion CFA.
In the same vein, the French government is also ready to make a substantial humanitarian assistance to Cameroon.
We are ready to facilitate and to support efforts to alleviate the economic consequences of the pandemic on the economy of Cameroon.
The ambassador leaves the Unity Palace convinced of the death of French-Cameroon relations as Cameroonians get reassured that the ship of state is in firm hands.
G20 countries have granted a moratorium of debt relief of about 12,098 billion CFA francs to 40 low-income countries as one of the measures to help meet up with the challenges of the coronavirus that is bringing hardships. Luma Slim Davis puts the initiative into context.
The coronavirus menace has drawn worldwide attention, with scientists seriously searching for a cure to keep the pandemic at bay. While serious efforts have been made in various aspects to cushion the economic and social drawback caused by the virus worldwide, African countries are looking up to the West to cancel Africa's debt to help overcome difficulties. In the third ordinary session of the CEMAC Finance and Economic Ministers in the Congo recently, a debt cancellation was asked for, a request that is in line with the French President Emmanuel Macron's idea to cancel Africa's debt. However, in what appears to be a response to these calls for debt relief, the G20 countries have granted a moratorial debt relief of $20 billion, an equivalent of 12,098 billion CFA francs for the African countries. In this amount, Gabon benefits from a debt relief of over 1,348 billion CFA francs, the Central African Republic over 14,922 billion CFA francs, and Cameroon 10.12 billion CFA francs. This moratorial debt relief that covers up to 2020 may just be a step to a total cancellation of Africa's debt.
And while Cameroon battles with the coronavirus, a number of mechanisms have been put in place by different donor institutions to enable the state effectively fight against the pandemic without crippling state coffers, ranging from loans and donations to debt relief and rescheduling. The various options are expected to keep debt levels sustainable and the social fabric intact. Crise reports.
60% of the country's contribution to the International Monetary Fund, that is what the state of Cameroon proposed to receive from the Bretton Woods institution to fight against the spread of the coronavirus. For now, 50% is what has been retained, 110 billion CFA francs. This, however, does not fall under debt servicing, as Cameroon remains in the 3-year economic and financial program under the extended credit facility. This supposes that the fund is not expecting any repayment of dues from Cameroon in 2020. Meanwhile, France's support to African countries to help check the COVID-19 spread will be made available through the French Development Agency. The more than 1 billion CFA francs package will take the form of loans and donations as announced by France's top diplomat. The funds Cameroon is expecting to benefit from and redirected from development aid will be invested in the reinforcement of health systems, scientific research, and ensuring food security. For its part, the Development Bank of Central African States will put a 90 billion CFA francs check at the disposal of countries in the sub-region to fund public projects aimed at stemming the coronavirus pandemic. Cameroon will equally be looking forward to receiving assistance from the World Bank through mechanisms from which states can push through with their development targets while preserving the social fabric. The most vulnerable populations will be in focus. Debt rescheduling has also been proposed and is under review by members of the G20 bloc. Amounting to more than 100 billion CFA francs, the hope is that nations will be given time to somewhat deal with the impact of the coronavirus on their economies before being able to handle other matters put on hold as a result.
Cameroon's public debt stands at over 8,400 billion CFA francs, about 37.5% of its GDP. Generally, government's debt as a result of its GDP is used by investors to measure a country's ability to make future payments of its debt, thus affecting borrowing costs and bond yields. Constantine Baum reports that Cameroon's debt remains sustainable following measures to strengthen public debt management.
Cameroon's public debt as of this year 2020 stands at 8,424 billion CFA francs, about 37.5% of the GDP, according to the Autonomous Sinking Fund. The amount consists of 28.6% external debt estimated at 6,445 billion CFA francs, while the internal debt is estimated at 1,942 billion CFA francs. The debt consists of concessional and non-concessional loans. The debt, however, doesn't put Cameroon in a vulnerable situation as measures have been taken to strengthen public debt management.
The debt remains sustainable. There's no particular problem. I told last time we're on 37.3% as of 31st of December 2019. So the fungible treasury bonds that we issue, we have a secured account in the central bank. So in terms of sustainability, we don't really have any problem. So it doesn't even go through the autonomous sinking fund. So it's actually within the revenue of the current revenue. That's how we're managing all this.
Public debt in Cameroon has steadily increased since the debt relieved under the Enhanced Heavily Indebted Poor Countries and Multilateral Debt Relief Initiatives. Cameroon's multilateral sources include the World Bank, African Development Bank, and the IMF, making a sum total of 2,346 billion CFA francs. The bilateral debt comes from partners such as China, France, and Turkey, estimated at 3,016 billion CFA francs. The public debt is as well derived from commercial sources such as Eurobonds estimated at 450 billion, Bank of China 130 billion, and Intesta 122 billion CFA francs. The debts come in as disbursements of statutory advances granted by development partners in the framework of the Economy and Financial Program for the acceleration of major infrastructure projects.
Prime Minister Joseph John Gute has launched a campaign to disinfect and decontaminate public offices. The exercise, which is another measure by the government to contain the spread of the coronavirus, took place at the Yaoundé train station. The event will continue nationwide. Sisako Tamko reports.
Public transport and other shared mobility services are considered to be high-risk environment for the spread of diseases, as they are a large number of people in a confined space with a variety of commonly touched surfaces where the virus can drop. So in addition to the 13 measures, the government has decided to wage the war against COVID-19 via another battlefront, the disinfection and discontamination of public spaces. This exercise, which was launched at the railway station, rallied members of the steering committee for the fight against COVID-19 around Prime Minister John Gute.
At the beginning of this pandemic, if you mention it very well, you will see that the domain which is very impacted is the transportation and the tourism. So I think it's a symbolic way to come and launch this ceremony here at the Gare of Yaoundé.
The party was led through a guided tour around the premises where they were able to observe the respect of social distancing as prescribed by the WHO and authorities. They trailed past the disinfection booth ticket office while teams of sanitary workers were on hand to spray concentrated bleach and water mixtures from drums on commonly touched surfaces in and out of the railway station and the wagon in a bid to kill viral particles that might linger on them. An exercise which Health Minister explained will be carried out nationwide.
It will be an operation that will extend to the other regions. I think we have to enter the train or the taxi or the bus which is disaffected.
Cameroun, in partnership with the authorities, is complying with the measures of social distancing by reducing not only the number of passengers but also making available wagons for confinement.
I am very pleased, I'm very proud that the Prime Minister come here to see the effort that was made by the different ministries, the Health Ministry, the Transportation Ministry and Cameroun, and we can see today the effectiveness of these measures which are done for the health of the people of Cameroon.
Through this campaign, Cameroon is joining nations across the world that have deployed disinfection teams to disinfect state buildings, schools, markets, even residential areas and other public spaces. The exercise is perceived as one of the most effective ways to fight the spread of COVID-19.
The Prime Minister of Government, Joseph John Gute, has extended measures taken to curb the spread of the coronavirus by 2 weeks. Speaking after a video conference with the Ministers of Health, Scientific Research, Economy and Mines, John Gute said schools may reopen on the 1st of June if efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 yield fruits. Let's listen to the Prime Minister.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Interministerial Committee in charge of monitoring the implementation of government's response strategy to the COVID-19 pandemic this Thursday, 16th April 2020, held its weekly meeting to assess ongoing actions. 4 major observations were made at the end of the various reports presented during this meeting. Firstly, it appears the number of patients testing positive to COVID-19 continues to increase. Statistics provided by the Ministry of Public Health show that 996 people have been infected against 731 on the 9th of April. However, 164 people have recovered from COVID-19, while 22 deaths from this virus have been reported. As a result, the mortality rate of COVID-19 remains low in our country compared to the total number of patients testing positive and to the situation in other countries. Secondly, it was noted that the population largely adheres to the measures prescribed by the head of state to limit the spread of COVID-19 in Cameroon. The measure concerning the compulsory wearing of protective masks in areas open to the public is welcomed and applied by a very large majority of our compatriots. In this regard, I would like to state that the technical standards and specifications recently published by the Minister of Industry are not intended to give few companies the monopoly of producing those masks. The aim of these standards is to improve the quality and effectiveness of the masks produced by our local industry and even artisanal masks produced by our tailors and seamstresses, to increase the level of individual and collective protection. Moreover, the masks do not mean that we must stop compliance with social distancing measures. I would like to observe that markets are still a major area of concern. I therefore call for a sense of civic-mindedness and responsibility for better protection in our markets. Thirdly, the government has taken full measure of the difficulties faced by certain key sectors of our economy as a result of the global health crisis caused by COVID-19 pandemic. I'm thinking in particular of the transport, hospitality, and catering sectors. In this regard, I would like to say that the restrictions that have been imposed on these sectors and many others since the 17th of March 2020 are certainly difficult to bear or manage, but essential to protect the national community given the magnitude of this global pandemic. It goes without saying that the restrictions will be gradually lifted as the pandemic is brought under control nationally and internationally. Fourthly, the government notes with satisfaction the mobilization of national and international stakeholders in the fight against COVID-19 in our country. I would like to seize this opportunity to thank those stakeholders for their generosity and solidarity by accepting to support us materially and financially in the fight against this pandemic. There is every reason to believe that actions being carried out in various fields to limit the spread of this virus in our country are already producing encouraging results and deserve to be intensified on the ground until this pandemic is eradicated. It is in this regard that the head of state, His Excellency Paul Biya, has taken the following 3 decisions. 1, the renewal for an additional 15 days of the 13 restrictive measures published on 17th March 2020 as part of the fight against the spread of the COVID-19 in our country, to which were added the additional measures communicated on the 9th of April 2020. 2, the resumption of classes on the indicative date of 1st June 2020 in all schools and universities, as well as in vocational centers and professional institutions. It is understood that this measure is subject to change depending on the evolution of the pandemic. 3, urgent finalization of the study to assess the impact of COVID-19 on the national economy and urgent determination of accompanying measures to be implemented to support the most affected sectors as well as the most fragile households. The head of state has instructed me to congratulate the specialized teams of the Ministry of Public Health and other sectoral administrations for their daily investment in the implementation of the measures adopted to contain the pandemic. To conclude, the committee's findings to date give us reason to be optimistic about our ability to contain this pandemic. To this end, I would like once again to urge the population to continue being actively involved in implementing the measures prescribed by the head of state, by remaining mobilized and vigilant, and above all, by working closely with the government to overcome this pandemic. I thank you for your kind attention.
Cameroon's Prime Minister John Gutte. Members of the National Assembly have been reassured of government's resolve to check the spread of the coronavirus in the country. This was in the course of an exchange with the Minister of Public Health, Manauda Malashi, presided over by House Speaker Honorable Kavayege Jibril. Esther Kmer reports that clarifications were made on the availability of test kits and the functioning of the Solidarity Fund.
Effectively managing COVID-19 and bringing the pandemic to a definite halt remains a major preoccupation of governments and members of parliament. House Speaker Honorable Kavayege Jibril used the exchange to applaud the creation of the Special Solidarity Fund by President Paul Biya and to hail the efforts of the medical personnel. Although Minister Manauda Malashi expounded on the evolution of the disease and the strategic response plan, over a dozen elected representatives probed into a number of issues. They questioned the running of the Solidarity Fund, which currently holds some 1,960,000,000 CFA francs, the country's capacity to test suspected cases, and the accessibility of mechanical ventilators.
So what we are requesting that the minister does is to ensure that he provides, one, test kits.
People are complaining they are not able to get tested. Some people are complaining that they are paying for those tests.
Government is now focused on finding new infected cases, providing treatment, and ensuring transparency in the handling of financial supplies.
We will receive about 100 respirators. We have around 20 kits today.
The creation of 5 special makeshift isolation units, the institution of call centers in all 10 regions, and the provision of protective kits to the medical corps are blueprints for success.
The Ministry of Justice has begun implementing the presidential decree reducing prison sentences. The 10 courts of appeal in the various regions will work in commissions to sort out the names of those to benefit. Beatrice Losamba has the details.
In accordance with Section 5 of the April 15 presidential decree reducing jail terms for it incumbent on the Minister of State, Minister of Justice, and Keeper of Seals to implement the decree. A day after it was signed, reports from the ministry suggest action would spring up at the level of the 10 courts of appeal in the country.
They will have a commission presided by the Procureur General, the Regional Delegate of Penitentiary Administration, the State Council of the area, and the superintendent of the prisons. They will try to treat one file to the another. Those who will be released will be released.
As concrete actions begin, it becomes clearer which inmates benefit from remissions. The decree does not apply to some groups of people. For instance, fugitives, persons imprisoned and sentenced for an offense committed while in detention, and others sentenced for offenses linked to the security of the state, terrorism, misappropriation of public property, and the list goes on. This act of clemency of the president is covered by the Constitution and Penal Code, which grants that it is the head of state's prerogative to pardon at his discretion. The implementation of the decree lays bare the impact of this decision in decongesting prisons.
At the end, we have the reduction of the numbers of the prisoners in our prisons. There is a sanity disaster now, COVID-19 pandemic.
A decision worth its weight in gold when put on the scale.
Let's now go over to the Public Health Emergency Operations Center to meet our reporter, Rana Tusali, and her guest, Dr. Eric Tandy, for the latest on the COVID-19. Tonight, their focus will be on the circular signed by the Minister of Public Health condemning the fact that COVID-19 patients are being asked to pay for services which are supposed to be free. Sally, you are going to confirm that these services have been really free from what the Minister says in his communique?
Good evening, Moki Edwin. Well, the good news from this end is that 168 recoveries have been recorded in Cameroon so far. But tonight, our focus will be on the circular signed by the Minister of Public Health, Manauda Malashi, condemning the fact that COVID-19 patients are being asked by some hospitals to pay for services which are supposed to be free. My guest this evening is Dr. Eric Tandy, a public health expert in the Ministry of Public Health. Good evening, Doctor.
Yeah, good evening, Sally.
Well, the minister is visibly not happy with this. What awaits those who are committing such acts if this should continue?
Yes, Sally, it is worth noting here that just like the normal action the minister often take as far as issues are concerned relating to health of the population of Cameroonian, this is a timely decision that goes to remind health workers and the population at large that the minister is not relenting his effort in order to see that measures that have been put in place by the government to render free services to the individual be respected fully, irrespective of who is concerned, irrespective of the structure. These individuals need to comply to the norms and regulations governing the state and in particular the Ministry of Health.
Now, are there families that have called to complain about this?
Remember, just like one of the channels of information from the minister as well as other leaders of the state, there is no information that the minister is not informed about. And remember, in every setting, we have anti-corruption commissions that have been set in some of these health facilities, as well as there are free lines to get to the Ministry of Health. So this information can as well come from collaborators within health facilities as well as family members. I think here we call on other family members and the population at large to contact the Ministry of Public Health at any time, as well as other ministry in collaboration, in alignment with government regulations, because we have an anti-corruption commission in the country. So it's not only to denounce what is related within public health, but as well as other malpractices within the services of the state.
Now, concretely, what measures have been taken to ensure that such doesn't happen again?
As far as COVID management is concerned and other activities within the state, I think there is a whole commission that has been set in place at the decentralization level that manages this crisis, and this commission now is in charge of following up any patients, even starting right from contact tracing, and even where we are now, we try to put in measures that governs the channel and the management of these activities, so we don't expect any malpractices to come up within the management team. And then again, I want to call on the population of Cameroon that they should know that the head of state have announced in alignment or through the COVID disease is free of charge. I mean, there is no mixed words here. It has been made very clear that the treatment of COVID is free in Cameroon. And anybody who requests for any assistance as far as this treatment is concerned should be denounced, and they know where to channel their question or their worries directly to the state. Thank you very much.
So you mean from diagnosis to hospitalization, everything is free?
Everything is completely free, and that is the measures that have been put in place by the government of Cameroon.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eric Tandy. It's always a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you very much.
Well, Moki, that's the latest from this end. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Rana Sally. Thanks for always being there. Now, on to the news. The leader of the African Movement for New Independence, Manidem, has successfully completed his treatment for coronavirus, which he contracted 3 weeks ago. And he said Kani congratulated the government for measures to stop the virus and calls on civilians to respect hygiene norms. Rene Kache reports from Douala.
It is 14 days exactly after a ferocious battle with the coronavirus. 2 weeks after, Anise Kmer is now in good shape, safe and sound.
You can see that I'm feeling strong. But 2 weeks ago, I wasn't like this.
The leader of the African Movement for New Independence, popularly known in its French acronym as MANIDEM, still remembers vividly how he contacted the virus.
I started feeling the symptoms of COVID-19 on March 29, 14 days after I left the Douala airport to welcome our compatriots. My doctor prescribed me some drugs, but 3 days later it got worse. I did a scan and it was that scan that confirmed I had COVID-19.
Shortly after leaving the hospital, Mr. Ekane went on a self-isolation at his Douala residence, where he scrupulously respected his treatment protocol. But how did he get treated?
I was treated with chloroquine and other drugs, but I also took some traditional medicine.
The fully recovered Anise Ekane salutes the professionalism and selfless sacrifices made by Cameroonian healthcare workers. He has, however, called on his compatriots, irrespective of their political or social backgrounds, to respect all the measures put in place by government.
This is an opportunity for every Cameroonian to demonstrate a spirit of solidarity.
Going by the words of Mr. Ekane, the coronavirus knows no one, but respects only those who follow the safety guidelines.
Inhabitants of Nyong and Fomo Division in the Central Region have received gifts from their elite Joseph Biya Asomo and Leopold Maxime Ekoeko to enable them to stop the spread of the coronavirus. Cynthia Saptala witnessed the handing over of the gifts.
It was at the esplanade of the SDO's office in Akonolinga that the handing over ceremony took place. Hundreds of cartons of soap, water containers with taps, buckets and face masks were distributed to authorities of the different localities to help the population prevent the spread of the novel coronavirus in the Nyong and Fomo division.
We are grateful to those sons of this division for the solidarity. We do hope that population will use the equipment.
The Defense Minister, Joseph Biya Asomo, and the Director General of External Research, Leopold Maxime Ekoeko, both elites of the locality.
The message is simple. When there is danger, all the sons of a community have to put their input so that the danger is put aside.
As of date, the division has not recorded any cases of COVID-19, and it is the wish of authorities that it remains so.
The Secretary of State at the Ministry of Defense in charge of the National Gendarmerie, Galaxy Toga, has donated protection kits against COVID-19 to the population of Bachenga. The kits of various types, amongst which are hand sanitizers, buckets, and others, were handed over to the beneficiaries today in Bachenga's Kilandandifon reports.
There is no coronavirus case yet in Bachenga, Lekie division of the Central Region, but the subdivision is close to Yaoundé and other areas already hit by the pandemic. The Secretary of State at the Ministry of Defense in charge of the National Gendarmerie, Galaxy Toga, an elite of the locality, has taken an active frontline position to say halt to the spread of the disease amongst his people. He has given them hydroalcoholic gel, buckets, soap, and other coronavirus preventive kits. The mayor and divisional officer for Bachenga, who are supervising the distribution of the kits to the inhabitants of the area, have appreciated what they call a timely gesture.
We are very satisfied and say thank you to Minister Galax Etoga, who has given us this material to help intensify our fight against coronavirus.
The reception of the donation from Mr. Galaxy Toga, the local authorities say, is also the beginning of an anti-coronavirus sensitization caravan in Bachenga.
Some hospitals in Yaoundé have been furnished with face masks, gloves, and hand sanitizers in the management and prevention of the coronavirus. The gesture is from IXBET Enterprise, which has currently accentuated its social actions in the country. Maimuna Njoya reports from CTV Center.
The massive and spontaneous contributions here and there since the outbreak of the coronavirus are worthy of note, conscious of the fact that much must be done to check the spread of the disease. The personnel of 1xBet were therefore sent out to donate necessary sanitary kits in some hospitals in Yaoundé. The items which were highly appreciated were the face masks, which have become obligatory in Cameroon.
That's a great gest because the situation is very bad, but we save this to ameliorate the treatment of patients. I want to thank 1xBet.
As pointed out by the hierarchy of 1xBet, the protection of human health is for them a top priority, and cognizant of the material challenges in some hospitals, it appeared vital to do something.
We will share freely to those who don't have. Since these pharmaceutical masks, they are very rare, we have decided to do our own masks with our logo 1xBet on it to share to the public so as to avoid the spread of this illness.
Besides the donation, basic protective measures against COVID-19 are also strictly followed within the enterprise.
It is an obligation to wash your hands before entering into our hall. And to have access into our hall, you need to have your mask to protect your mouth and your nose in order not to be part of the virus. And if you are a carrier of the virus, you don't need to contaminate the other clients. At the entrance, when you are into our halls, you sit 1 meter away from the other clients. And also, after 1 hour, you need to use water to wash your hands, or you disinfect your hands with all the solutions we have provided for our clients.
This humanitarian action of 1xBet will be extended to other areas in the days ahead.
The CRTV Training Institute for the Conservation of Audiovisual Heritage has, like other schools, opted for online lectures so their students can continue to study in spite of the current health crisis that has made the government to shut down some schools. Our reporter Cynthia Etim was at the institution today to find out how the digital classrooms are going on. Her report.
a.m. Thursday at the CRTV Training Institute for the Conservation of Audiovisual Heritage. The campus is calm. Online lessons have replaced classroom lectures.
Bonjour, il est 10 heures. Nous allons débuter avec notre cours sur l'initiation au logiciel Photoshop.
Distance learning is the method of teaching and learning being practiced in this institution due to the coronavirus scare in the country. The presence of lecturers like that of learners on campus is not necessary, yet they actively participate in the lessons.
We started our classes through a digital platform. Our students were waiting, really expecting that opportunity. Our teachers also. We had to be in the move.
But how does the digital classroom function?
We started by asking our children to be regrouped in sort of WhatsApp. We asked teachers by field to prepare lesson and exercise. We sent a message to the children asking them to be connected by 10 to 2 every day.
This new teaching and learning method, the school authorities say, is advantageous to both the institution and the students. E-learning, school officials say, has been embraced by the institution, and even after the health crisis, the school will continue with online lectures.
The newly appointed Secretary General of the National Assembly, Honorable Kmer Gaston, has been commissioned into office. He was installed today by the Senior Deputy Speaker, Honorable Hilarion Etong, who on behalf of the House Speaker enjoined the clerk of the lawmaking institution to work in accordance with the prescriptions of the Bureau of the National Assembly. Esther Kmer reports on the ceremony and the challenges that await the new boss.
Before the 23-man Bureau of the National Assembly and a cross-section of the personnel of the General Secretariat, the new clerk, Honorable Kmer Gaston, takes the baton of command. The brief installation ceremony saw the Senior Deputy Speaker, Honorable Hilarion Etong, remind the linchpin of the lawmaking institution of his delicate mission, working on the instructions of the Bureau of the National Assembly and staying at the disposal of all elected representatives, regardless of their political leanings, were some of the admonitions made in this regard. The expert in private law and former member of the National Assembly from 2007 to 2020 is ready for the new challenge.
I express my gratitude to the head of state first because he agreed the proposition of the Honorable Speaker. My ambition is to serve, to have all the confidence of members of a bureau and to make that National Assembly can grow.
As he assumes function, the graduate from the National School of Administration in Paris, France, is expected to ensure the professional well-being of the Assembly personnel, organize trainings and ensure the complete relocation of the staff and services. He will also have the duty to foster parliamentary diplomacy and to watch out for the full implementation of measures put in place to curb COVID-19 for the institution's workers as well as the lawmakers of the 10th legislative period.
All citizens will henceforth need to have a taxpayer's number in order to conduct certain transactions like opening a bank account and subscription for water and electricity. The move falls in line with the dematerialization process put in place to ease fiscal procedures. Crise reports that it is the substance of an arrêté signed by the Director General of Taxation.
Possessing a unique taxpayer's identification number was made mandatory by the 2020 Finance Law. An increase in fiscal revenue is the target. The reinforcement and amelioration of the fiscal identification system is one of the processes chosen as a means to this end.
Our taxpayers used to present a taxpayer number to make some operation. This obligation is extended to some other transactions like opening bank account, subscribing insurance, subscribing to electricity or water. Without the taxpayer number, they cannot realize all these operations. By getting information, we can identify new taxpayers.
A unique identification number in this case is a number attributed to an individual or moral person, which easily singles them out as taxpayer or not. It is unique, obtained free of charge, and definite. All citizens are concerned irrespective of age.
Taxpayers that who have already done all these transactions without having taxpayer number. They have a period for regularization.
Taxation officials affirm that it falls in line with dematerialization embarked upon by the administration in a bid to make fiscal procedures less cumbersome.
And that ends the 7:30 news on CRTV. I am Moki Edwin Kinzeka in Yaoundé. Thank you for watching.